Just first of all start by thanking the Allgemeine for this great honor and to thank all of you for being here, various people in the room who make my life possible and indeed endurable, and you all know who you are, so thank you. David mentioned the importance of truth in his remarks, and actually in her remarks just now, Barry echoed something that was on my mind. We didn't plan this, but it sometimes happens this way, that two people are thinking about the same thing. And she made a subtle, glancing reference there to W.H. Auden's great poem written in this great city, September the 1st, 1939. And it's often on my mind, as it is particularly perhaps tonight, because it's slightly embarrassing, as she said, for somebody who's British to receive an award or indeed a compliment. But I would just say that actually something that is on my mind often is not just that thing about the importance of truth, as David mentioned, but a line from that poem where Auden, sitting in this city, said, "All I have is a voice to undo the folded lie." And I suppose I think of that as one of my self-appointed tasks, to try to use what voice I have to undo the folded lie. Since I write a column for Barry about poetry and things worth remembering, perhaps I could just treat myself, if not you, to the final stanza of that great poem, by the way. This is what Auden wrote. He said, "Defenseless under the night, our world in stupor lies, yet dotted everywhere, ironic points of light flash out wherever the just exchange their messages. May I, composed like them of eros and of dust, beleaguered by the same negation and despair, show an affirming flame." Now, I wanted to mention just two things briefly in my remarks, and it goes back to that thing of truth. And I just wanted to mention two truths tonight. The first is that a number of people have already mentioned tonight something very important, which is an undeniable fact, which is that the events, the atrocities of October the 7th were the worst massacre of Jews since the Holocaust. The great Ruth Wise, emeritus professor at Harvard, and perhaps one of the very few people left who adds any luster to that ancient name, said in a podcast on the anniversary of October the 7th last year, she said there was something very interesting about that phrase. She said, it's right, and it's right to mention the victims, but here's what's interesting. Some people in our society, here in America and elsewhere, have had the courage, why it should require courage I don't know, but the courage to identify that fact, identify who the victims were. Yet what's almost entirely absent in our society is anyone with the courage to identify who the Nazis are, to say, why are they among us? Even at the worst times of radicalism in this country's past, we didn't see people at major institutions, Ivy League universities, distinguished guilds and trade unions and much more. We didn't see them siding with people who wanted the annihilation of the Jewish people. We didn't. What has gone wrong here in America and in the West? That there are people playing, I'm being generous, with the most dangerous evil imaginable. What does it say about us and the society which we've allowed to emerge? This is a deep challenge for us. But the second truth I wanted to mention was something which David also made mention of, which is the positive news. It's been, as Barry mentioned, my enormous honor to spend much of the last 15 months with the young men and women of the IDF, having an award called Warrior of Truth. As I say, it's slightly embarrassing. I would like to return the favor in a way. The real warriors are very clear. We all know who they are. They are these remarkable young men and women, and we owe them everything. and the civilized world owes them everything. It's often said that the sign of getting old is that policemen look young, but I can tell you that when soldiers look like teenagers, you really know you're getting on a bit. In the past year, have had the privilege of being with the IDF in Israel, in Judea and Samaria, in Lebanon and in Gaza. And I've seen these extraordinary people up close, firsthand. I wanted to just mention two groups of soldiers in particular. One is the soldiers of the Golani Brigade. It seems wrong perhaps to single out any division or company, but because if I kept going, I'd go on all night, and we don't have all night. I was with the Golani Brigade quite a lot in the past year, and on one occasion I was in Lebanon with them, and two things happened that made a particular impression on me that day. The first was a rather embarrassing one, which was that a young soldier in the battlefield recognized me and saluted me. And I was simultaneously deeply moved and deeply mortified. I said, but you're the one that deserves a salute. I'm just a writer. But later that night, the brigade returned to one of their headquarters in Binyamina, and a UAV drone came through the ceiling of the dining hall as they sat down to their dinner, and I was there as the wounded were being brought out, and my cameraman was helping tend to the wounds, the minor wounds. Four young men were killed, but I was speaking at one point to a young, he looked 12, 19-year-old soldier, and his friend recognized me, and we started talking, and this young soldier said in rather broken English, he said, you're a writer, you're a journalist? I said, yes. And he looked at me, he had blood on his neck, and he said, are you on our side? And I said, of course I'm on your side. And he said, but it seems to me that a lot of the world thinks we're the bad guys. And it just was heartbreaking. So I sat down with him and explained to him that although there are evil people in the world who do think that, all the good people are on his side. And what I learned from that was something which I wanted to just mention this evening, which is that if anything I do say or write gives any encouragement to anyone, they should know that it's very much a reciprocal thing. If you give encouragement to people, you also get encouragement back. And I always think that if I do give any encouragement to people, particularly to people like that young soldier, it's very much my honor to be able to do so. I just wanted to mention one other group of soldiers. Late last year, I was in a Sukkot tent with some friends in Jaffa and had just shaken the lula for the first time. I think it's right, the lula, yes. I hadn't done it before, and it was all explained to me, and I pretended to understand what was going on. But I did shake it over each shoulder and did all that, and I sat down, and my friends weren't on their phones, but I was, and I sat down, and I immediately got a photograph from a friend in Gaza saying, I think we've got Sinwar, and here's the body. And I kept it quiet from my friends, but about 3 hours later, everyone in Israel knew, so it was sort of hard to keep a secret there, as you know. Anyway, one of them said, how long have you known for Douglas? I said, well, I shook that thing, and then Sinwar died, and I said I didn't like to say anything, but this is a really dangerous weapon, and you should make sure it doesn't get into the wrong hands. In any case, I tried to get to Rafah as soon as I could, and I managed it within about 24 hours. And it was my great honor to be there with some of the young men from the IDF's Infantry Commanders and Combat Training School, known as the Bizlach. And there were several really remarkable things about that day. One was hearing firsthand the battle they'd had the previous day, a couple of days earlier. And there were two things in particular that stood out to me. One was that it was members of this unit who had had this terrible, terrible tragedy happen the December before, where someone had, in this terrible situation, in this unimaginable battlefield that Hamas had created, had accidentally shot 3 hostages. And it was a nightmarish day, which as ever much of the international press misrepresented and presented it as if, you know, the Israelis are so evil they even killed their own hostages. It was disgusting, the international coverage. And as some of you will know, the unit in question went through very, very dark days. But the mother of one of the hostages who had been accidentally killed sent them a voice message after her son's death, saying, I don't blame you, I love you, I hold you close, and you have to remain strong. And in the middle of Rafah that day, one of the soldiers played me that they'd just got a message from the mother of that same soldier, and he played me the voice message. And here's what she said to them. She said, exactly 10 months ago, I sent you a message, and I told you to keep fighting, and not to think that you shot the kidnapped on purpose, because we need you safe and sound, and to keep taking care of yourselves. Today, you did the thing we were all waiting for. You saved the people of Israel. It was... But the second thing I wanted to say about that was another thing which gave me enormous inspiration and encouragement. I realized that day that the young man who almost certainly fired the shot that killed the butcher of October the 7th was a 19-year-old member of the Bizlach. And here's a very, very interesting thing. That young man was not in uniform on October the 7th, 2023. In other words, by his actions, Yahya Sinwar created not just the generation, but the man who killed him. And this is a very, very great accomplishment and a great inspiration, I would suggest, to any sensible, sane young people worldwide. Young people in America and the rest of the West have lots of paths they could go down. They could go down that path of what I describe in my forthcoming book as the support of the death cults. They could side with the losers, with the Sinwars, with the Nasrallahs. But the cleverer ones among them might have noticed that those men all have something in common, which is that they've all gone to see their, in a fatal misreading, one 72-year-old virgin a textual error, which is... But I just wanted to say that apologies to any 72-year-olds present, by the way. You all look great. But I just wanted to finish by saying, you know, back to this thing, encouragement is a two-way street. I've had enormous encouragement in the past year from seeing the young generation of Israelis, and have said many times, but repeat it now, that any country in the world should be so lucky as to have young people like this. Any country in the world should be so lucky. We will be very lucky in America and in Britain and other countries if we can produce young men and women of this caliber. And the final thing I just wanted to say, apart from thanking you and thanking Allgemeiner again for this honor, is to say that Barry slightly referred to it there earlier in her beautiful remarks. I've thought for some 25 years now on a phrase which the jihadists always use. They always use this phrase, whether it's Al-Qaeda when they attacked New York, this city, in 2001, or whether it's the Hamas terrorists who attacked Israel on October the 7th and many times since. They always say the same thing. They say, we love death more than you love life. And I've thought about that a lot over the years as I've lost friends to that death cult everywhere from Paris to Afghanistan. And I've often mulled on it. How can a society, how can a free society, a liberal, free, democratic society like ours, how can we face down such an enemy, a necrophilic death cult? And in the past 15 months, I've realized what the answer is. It's the answer that the IDF gives, it's the answer that the people of Israel have given, which is, there is nothing wrong with loving life this much. And if you wish to worship death, be our guest. We may even help you. But we will not apologize, not the Jewish people, not Gentiles, not anyone else. We will not apologize for loving life and for fighting for life. So I want to thank you, but I pass the award again to the young men and women of the IDF. These are the real warriors, but thank you for this honor.
Thanks for watching. Drop a comment below. Don't forget to like, share, and hit subscribe to stay updated with our latest content. Until next time, stay informed and inspired. This is Dejobnik signing off.